Happy birthday, Luminary. Welcome back, beautiful souls, to the Luminary Podcast. Today is the 3-year anniversary of Luminary being out in the world and serving all of you beautiful souls. So thank you. Thank you so much for listening. I am always so appreciative of it, and I love hearing that it is out in the world doing what it was always intended to do, which was to activate and illuminate star seeds across the globe, bring you closer to the truth of who you are, hopefully light a fire under your ass. Light a fire under your ass for the excitement of being here on Earth during ascension, having awareness of what is going on, having higher awareness, having the awareness to realize that you are creating your reality and there's absolutely nothing that you cannot do or be or have in this world, in this universe. Yes, you. I'm talking to you, not the person sitting next to you. I'm talking to you. I think one of my favorite parts of being a public figure, having a public business, having a podcast, putting lots of content out there, is getting to hear about your dreams, what you want to do. That is always very exciting for me. And yet over the years that I have been doing this, I've discovered that there are so many people with a dream, something that they want to do, that in my perspective is so simple. It's so easy. And yet, where you're sitting, you're experiencing a major block about why you believe you can't do it. So today, I want to talk about what it takes to start launching some of your dreams out there into reality. I'm going to talk about podcasting. I'm going to talk about how I got my podcast started, but I'm also going to talk about the mindset and the energetics behind launching something out there for the public to see and to receive. Because the physical reality of it is very, very simple and straightforward. Where we feel blocks and where we have to go through evolution and change is in the mindset, which triggers energy in our body, which we interpret as emotions and feelings. I'm also going to talk a little bit about YouTube and having an online business. So if these are things that you have been thinking about or considering, or you have a dream and you are feeling like you can't do it, like there is something blocking you, and maybe it's your own excuses, but most of the time it's you not having a bigger perspective. So I want to give you that bigger perspective. So I think it doesn't really matter what your dream is. This is really going to serve you. Something I get asked about all the time is what I think about the younger generations. And there has been this old world rhetoric, and I say old world as in pre-2012, pre-official fourth density. There has been this old world rhetoric of older generations saying the younger generations are fucked, they are totally screwed, like, I feel so bad for them, look what they have to deal with, or they're messing everything up, or they don't respect their elders, or what's wrong with this younger generation. You know, it's all of that kind of bullshit. And I get asked that a lot because of the work that I do, right? Ascension, which is the future of this planet. I work literally in the future, bringing future information into this present moment so that we can actually get to that future. And my opinion of the younger generations is that they are fucking awesome. They are awesome. They are going to create things beyond our wildest dreams. They are going to live in the most beautiful planet that you can ever imagine. It is only going to get better and better and better and better here. That's it. What do you see about things that are, going downhill? That's the old world. And all of that energy, it gets sucked up, absorbed, and then it gets transmuted into 0 point. And I truly, truly believe and feel in Gen Z, Gen Alpha, as quirky and weird as we might perceive them in the 3D reality because they are different than us, I can sense when I look at them through my fifth dimensional lens that they are literally the new Earth leaders that have arrived to create something that has never been on this planet before. And the reason that I'm bringing them up and into this conversation, I don't know that I have tons of Gen Z and Gen Alpha listeners. Most of my listeners are Millennial and Gen X. The reason I'm bringing them into this conversation is because I think that if you are someone who wants to launch a dream, that you can learn a lot from them because they are fearlessly going out there, fearlessly putting themselves out there. The silly, the weird, the quirky, the TikTok dances, the things that you might think are completely cringe are making them 6 and 7 figures a year, and they will never sit around wondering, like, what am I going to study at university? How am I going to struggle to get into the 9 to 5? How am I going to climb the ladder? They are not interested in that world because it's the old world. And so I think one of the best things that you can do as probably a millennial or a Gen X, one of the best things you can do is start having a little bit more of a younger mindset, something a little bit more spontaneous, something a little bit more exploratory, something a little bit more relaxed. And you're going to see when I really get into the mindset and energetics that is what is required to have your dream out in this world. You don't see the billionaires of the world or really successful people who have taken their dream and made it into whatever you want to consider success. Maybe that's a home in the mountains. Maybe that is an 8-figure business. Maybe it's the ability to retire at 29. Maybe it is working for the rest of your life, but doing something that you love. Holy shit, that's a successful person. Getting up every day and saying, I love what I do and I wouldn't change it to anything else. That is, to me, one of the prime definitions of success. But what you're going to immediately notice about those people is that there is this relaxed energy about them. And so a lot of people want to interview them and ask them, like, why are you not so stressed out, crying in a corner and freaking out about how visible you are to the world? How many people might criticize you? How many people are receiving your words and your energy and what you're putting out there? How does that not overwhelm you? And one of the reasons is because they have cultivated a mindset that has normalized that level of visibility or that success in their life to a relaxed point of being. And it's not that they haven't had those moments of crying on the floor. I certainly have, but those were not the moments that were like the height of my success. Those were not even the moments that led to the height of my success. In fact, those were just the moments when I was seriously doubting myself and really kind of fucking up the energy, the momentum that I had built that I couldn't see, because we can't see energy. We can't see all that's in our vortex. We can't see all that we have going as far as momentum inside of our personal vortex, our personal universe, where we are creating all of these dreams and then either allowing or disallowing them into our physical reality. The other reason I bring up the younger generations is because, and I just had this conversation with my mom, we were talking about my brother and his wife. They're both Gen Z and they want to start their own business and they're very entrepreneurial. My brother's been like having business ideas and he has his own little business, and then his wife just launched a business and they want to start their own business together. That's a different business, and they're very entrepreneurial. My mom is a boomer, and so she's like, whoa, that is not safe for you to be out there starting your own business. I think she just kind of has myself, the entrepreneur of the family, like, I don't know, I'm in some sort of block in her mind. I'm set away as some sort of other creature that exists, that she doesn't know how. She doesn't know how I exist. But for her, that is not safe. Like, you know, all the questions come up about, what about retirement? What about your insurance? What about your dental? Like, what ladder are you gonna climb if you're the ladder? And being an entrepreneur is so hard. And I told her, Mom, the generations coming up are going to completely dismantle everything we know about those old corporate world, those old jobs. That's the old world. They're all going to be entrepreneurs. Everyone is going to be an entrepreneur. I'm just going to call it right now, like Andy Warhol did when he said that in the future, everyone would be famous. And now we have social media, and literally anyone who wants to be famous can become famous. I'm going to call it right now. In the future, everyone is going to be an entrepreneur. They're going to be some version of entrepreneur. They're going to have their own thing. They're going to be their own boss. They're going to be in charge of themselves, and they're going to create the most extraordinary things in the new earth. And so I think if you can start getting into that mindset that the future is entrepreneurship, the future is you being in charge of yourself, whatever that looks like. It doesn't look like you going out and renting a space and saying, hello, I have a business now and I sell this, trinket or whatever. For most people, it's going to look like being a digital entrepreneur, having a service, having a gift, having a skill, making art, different things that are what you would like to cultivate and bring into the world and get paid for it. And that mindset is so already built into Gen Z and Gen Alpha, and I don't even know who's coming behind. I don't even know what the next one is named, but it's already so built into them that they can just put themselves out there and that it will be successful doing what they want to do and making an enormous, tremendous living from it. So if you are someone who has had this dream or this idea that you have been wanting to put out there, or you're maybe still looking for that idea, for that thing that you want to do, I just want to tell you how I got started. And we'll go into some of the specifics of what it takes to launch a podcast. I've heard from many of you that you either want to start a podcast, and I am so grateful and in awe that I have inspired people to go and start their own podcasts. Those podcasts are out there in the world. So thank you for letting me be your inspiration. What's crazy is I'd never listened to a podcast in my life before 2020. Never. I'd never opened my podcast app on my iPhone. I'd never subscribed to anyone's podcast. I really didn't even know what the hell they were. I had no idea that they were popular. I think they're a lot more popular now, but I had no idea that they'd been growing in popularity for like the last 10 years before 2020. And I honestly thought of it as some sort of weird niche radio. I'm like, you're telling me that people are basically just starting their own radio station out there. And it's not the same as having a radio station, but that was my perception of it, is that people could just go and record themselves, put it out there, and somehow other people were listening to whatever the hell they had to say. I had no idea what a freaking podcast was until 4 years ago. And now my podcast is listened to in, I think we're in 93, 94 countries around the world. So the way that it started, that I actually started listening to podcasts, this was my whole spiritual awakening. I'll just put it into like 2 minutes for you. I was on a trip around the world using my life savings to travel because I thought, fuck it or die. Fuck it or die. Like, in for a penny, you're in for as much money as you have in your savings account. So I was on this trip and I had just landed in Asia. So I want to say I was in Indonesia, and this girl from my old job, like, bless her heart, she triggered my spiritual awakening, and her and I never really got along. But I followed her on Instagram, and she posted something on her stories about like, I'm manifesting, like something. I don't even know what it was. and she had this link to a podcast. And the podcast was like how to manifest. And I was like, wow, this is so stupid, so dumb. Manifestation is not real. It's all in your head. Like, you're fucking delusional. You guys, I was not very nice back then. I was so full of negative energy. I was literally that bitch. And yeah, I was like thinking all these negative things, but for whatever reason, my little finger went and pressed that button on her Instagram stories, and I was brought to this podcast, and I started listening to it. And the episode itself triggered my spiritual awakening, all of my self-awareness, all of my mindset work, and like, honestly, I'm so thankful for that girl for doing that, even though I know that energetically it would have happened anyway. But I do believe that in some level we had this like soul contract where she was like, you're not going to like me that much. You're going to think I'm stupid and annoying, and I'm going to change your life and completely prove you wrong. And boy, oh boy, 4.5 years later, living as a manifestation coach and spirituality teacher and a podcaster, I could not have been more wrong. So be careful what you think is stupid out there, because in my experience, it has almost always come back to bite me in the ass and prove me completely and absolutely wrong in whatever regard it is. So that started my spiritual awakening. I could not listen to enough podcasts. I was listening to podcasts every day, sometimes multiple per day, as many as I could get my hands on. I was literally drinking them down as if they were water and sustenance. I couldn't get enough. And I remember in 2020, I came back to the United States and things were all crazy and closed up, but eventually later that year, I ended up moving to New England, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. Everything was still kind of half closed up. We were wearing masks still. It was such an impersonal time. I couldn't make any friends. I couldn't get to know anyone. I couldn't even come within, a few feet of people. And I didn't know what I wanted to do to make money. I still had some savings, but not enough to pay rent in New England and, live my life. And so I ended up becoming an Uber Eats driver, and I would drive around town. I loved it. Okay. I freaking loved it. And I know a lot of people kind of shit on that kind of thing, but it was one of the most magical times of my life. It was when I realized that I should be an entrepreneur, because I loved having the freedom to work when I wanted to work. And it was just amazing for me that you could just open your phone, get in your car, drive around, deliver rich people food. Everyone in New England, well, not everyone, but all the people who live on the coast are pretty much very wealthy. And so it was delivering food to rich people, and they were changing my mindset so much about money and wealth, and they were so nice. I always thought that rich people were rude because that's what you see in movies, and I'd grown up very poor, and my family was very anti-wealthy people. And they totally changed my mind in New England. They were so nice. Some of the nicest, most generous people. And I realized that everything I believed about money and about wealth and being wealthy was totally backwards. That when you have more money, you're much more likely to be more generous and to not give a fuck about all the little stuff that poor people are worrying about and fretting about all the time. And so it really helped change my mindset. And so drive around, I would listen to podcasts all day long, and I would start monologuing in my own head about things that I was learning and things that I wanted to teach. And I was becoming psychic, and I was practicing my psychic skills, but I didn't know that I was tapping into streams of consciousness that wanted to come through me. And I had nowhere to really put all of this consciousness that was coming through me. So I started putting it on Instagram. I started putting it in captions for pictures that I would post, and then I started putting it on my stories, and I would have these crazy long stories, 25, 30 slides of me teaching these really in-depth spirituality lessons. And this is so funny. All the people were following me at that time. It's they showed up for the travel content, and they were getting this sermon on energetics and the nature of the universe. So yeah, there were probably some unfollows, but for the most part, people were like intrigued, the same way that people are intrigued when they show up at my podcast for whatever reason and they start listening to these transmissions. And so they were intrigued, and I knew that it needed to come out somewhere, but I was so afraid to put it onto a podcast because it just seemed like this huge thing that I could never do. It was like, I don't even know how to do that. And I'm going to tell you how literally right now in very easy, simple steps. Like you could do this in a weekend. But as much as I wanted to start my own podcast because I was obsessed with them and I was listening to them so many times a day, and I knew that I had my own thoughts and my own words and my own teachings that I could put out there. But I remember that summer, this was summer of 2021, and I was moving back across the country. It was going into the desert. I was becoming psychic. Like, it all happened very, very quickly. And I remember landing back in Washington State and just knowing that I was supposed to start this podcast, but feeling like this is such a big block. How could I possibly do this? I don't even know what to do. And of course, the universe was already working because there were much bigger forces at work that wanted these transmissions to come through to serve and to help all of you. It really wasn't that much about me. I was just a maybe like 1/3 of the whole show, 1/3 of the party. And I remember I was telling my sister I wanted to start a podcast, and she was like, "Oh, I have this podcast microphone, literally professional grade, that I'm about to throw out," because she's one of those people that throws everything away. She can't stand clutter. She's like, "I'm literally about to throw it out, give it to a thrift store or whatever, because it's just been sitting in our closet." And her husband had won it at some sort of convention. And I was like, "Don't throw it away. Like, give it to me. Like, I'll take it." I didn't even know what it looked like. I didn't even know how to plug in or use a microphone. Actually, that's not true. I had spoken in microphones before at my previous job, but never into a podcast microphone. So I had the equipment. And I had the equipment in a dream, and I had no idea how to plug the two together. And I ended up dragging out launching my podcast for 4 months. It launched on September 22nd, 2021. And as I'm saying that, I'm looking at the clock right now, and it's 11:11 a.m. My spirit guides love when I tell this story. Probably because they want you to start your own podcast so they can also start working through you too. But September 22nd this year is the autumnal equinox. It's the September equinox. And it was also on the 22nd 3 years ago. I had no idea what the hell an equinox was in 2021. And later I would go on to have some of my biggest live events on the equinoxes. That has always been such a powerful day for me energetically because the energy is perfectly balanced between masculine and feminine, light and dark. So in its own way, it worked itself out perfectly, but I'll never forget those 4 months that I agonized over how to start a podcast and how hard I thought it was going to be, and how it just felt like this big block, I couldn't get through. So I want to unblock you right now and really tell you how simple it is, that block exists in your mind. And the block is actually a blank space where you don't know how to do something, and so you perceive it to be more difficult or challenging than it actually is. And once you learn how to do it, it becomes one of the most simple things in your life. There cannot be anything in my life or business more simple than podcasting. I would rather record a new episode than write pieces of content for Instagram. I would rather publish a new episode than do a YouTube live stream or something. For me, it's one of the easiest things because I learned how to do it, and then you realize that it's actually really very simple. So this is the practical aspect of what you need to do if you want to start your own podcast, and then we'll go into the mindset. Number one, you do need some equipment. You need something to record on. And what is so cool nowadays, this didn't even exist like 3 years ago, but these podcast microphones, they're all over the place. They're on Amazon and you can get good ones for like $50, maybe even less than $50. I remember a few years ago, this was before my spiritual awakening. I want to say it was like 2018, 2019. My brother, who lives in Arkansas, was telling me that he wanted to start a podcast, that this is literally like one of his dreams that he has never taken action on, even though his sister does it easily. But one of his dreams was to have a podcast. And I remember me asking him like, well, why don't you start it? Like, what's the problem? And back then I still believed that podcast was some sort of weird personal radio. And he's like, well, it's really expensive. Like, I would need at least $500 to buy all of the equipment first. And then I'd need like a soundproof room to record in. And yeah, it's just a lot. If that is still your impression of podcasting, it could not be further from the truth. I know people who record podcast episodes like on their balcony, and you can hear like cars going by and honking in the background. You don't need $500 worth of equipment. You don't need a soundproof room. I record this in my office. I used to record this in my bedroom, like at my vanity table. Now I have an office. I record this in my office. And the only equipment that I have is the same microphone that I started with 3 years ago and a computer. So the software that I use is just GarageBand, and that's standard on any MacBook. So if you have a MacBook, it's going to come with GarageBand. I think that you can download it on other computers, but I know that there are also other like audio recording softwares out there that you can just get from online. Everything is so crazy easy these days. I mean, we have people making high quality videos, posting them on YouTube and Instagram that look so good, and people are getting the software to do it from apps and from online for free. And they're getting microphones and lighting equipment from Amazon for like $20 and $30. It's so incredibly accessible right now, even more so than it was 3 years ago. And actually, just like 2 years ago, maybe a year ago, I had this woman in my DMs telling me, oh, I really want to start a podcast. Can you tell me the exact make and model of the microphone that you use? Because I have to use the same one that you use. And I could tell that she had this belief that if she just replicated everything exactly the way that I was doing it, that it would work for her and that she would have this podcast like blow up or something. And the truth is, like, this microphone is 3 years old. So it's not even like probably top end that you could get right now. And it's really not about the equipment. The equipment doesn't give you like the gumption to put yourself out there and to keep going and to build an audience and to allow this thing to cook for several years. My podcast is still considered a baby podcast because it hasn't reached 5 years old. My podcast would still be considered young in podcasting circles, so that it's only 3 years old. At 5 years, that's considered a mature podcast where you might be starting to like really pick up momentum. And so the truth is, like, this is a long game. Podcasting is a long game. It's not for people that are like, I just want to put out one episode and have 1 million downloads immediately, and then I'll know that this is what I'm meant to do, and then I'll keep going. That is the complete opposite of what you'll need to do. You'll need to actually get together this equipment and then actually make an episode, put it out there, let the, 20 people that you know listen to it, including your own mom, and then grow your podcast by putting out more and more and more episodes. You're literally building a catalog so that when people find your episodes in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, they actually have a catalog to binge and to listen to. I don't know about you guys, but I don't tend to listen to podcasts that only have a few episodes. If they only have like less than 50 episodes, I am much more likely to not listen because something about it just tells me like, well, maybe they just started, maybe they're new at what they're doing, maybe they don't really know what they're talking about, maybe they're not going to be as interesting as someone who's been talking on a microphone for 100, 200, 300, 400 episodes. So you kind of have to put yourself into the listener's shoes and realize that you're going to start out slow. You're going to start out with only a few downloads. You're going to start out, but then you're going to build. And this is what I love about podcasts is that all of it builds over time. All of your downloads build over time. They never go away and reset and restart. All of them build together. And that increases the algorithms on the podcast apps to begin showing your podcast because it has matured. That's why they show it to other people. When you look at the podcasts that are very highly shown on podcast apps, those are mature podcasts. So either they already had a built-in audience somewhere else that immediately began downloading thousands and thousands of episodes and increased them in a small amount of time, or that's a channel, a show that's been cooking for a long time and has built all of that up just through organic growth or just from being a podcast or whatever outlets that they have. So it's a long game and it's about cooking. The next couple of things that you're going to need, so you have your equipment, right? You need a microphone, you need a computer, you're going to need an audio software, and you can look on YouTube how to use these audio softwares. I watched a YouTube video about how to even use GarageBand, and then I watched another one about how to create intro music, and you can get tons of free music online. You just download it. Literally, you copy and paste and drag and drop it into GarageBand. It could not be more easy and simple than that. I watched a few YouTube videos. They taught me how to work the damn thing. And then you're going to need some cover art, right? You need a name for your podcast. You need some cover art. You're going to need a decent photo of yourself if you want to put your face on it. I design all of my own cover art. I think we've gone through 3 of them. Yeah, I think we've had about 3. And the one that we have right now, I really love it. And I don't have any plans on changing it anytime soon. But I design all of that myself in Canva. Like, you can get the free version of Canva and make yourself some cover art in like 10, 15 minutes. And yeah, the first cover art that you make, you're going to look back at it and you're going to cringe and you're going to say, wow, that was... That's what I do when I look at the first one. This podcast actually was not always called Luminary either. And I don't know if a lot of people know this, but you can change the name of your podcast. People do it all the time in this industry. Change the name of your podcast. This used to be called My Celestial Design Podcast because that was the name of my business and I was a human design reader. And all of that lasted about 6 months. But then I had this podcast already started. And so it wasn't until, I want to say, was it 2022? Maybe it was 2023 when I changed the name to Luminary. And I love that name. No plans on changing it anytime soon. It's not the same name as my business. My business is called Wellspring Official. And, sometimes you're just in a season where like, that's just going to be the name. That's going to be the cover art. That's your style. That's who you are. I mean, we're all cringing looking back at like our style in 2006, 2008. It's like we change. We're evolutionary beings. So you don't have to get it perfect the first time, but you do have to be open to learn. All right, so the last practical aspect that you need is a distributor. You need someone to distribute your podcast. And there are probably even more options now than there were when I started. When I started, I had no idea what the hell I was doing. I went for the distributor that was the most simple, the most straightforward. Like they were user friendly for people like me who had no idea what they were doing. It was like, just hit the upload button and then type the caption and schedule it. It was very, very simple. And I still like them. I have never looked for another distributor. I use Buzzsprout. You guys may have seen that in some of the branding or in the podcast's website, which is, I guess, pretty nice of them. They create a whole website with just my podcast on there and all of the links to the different ways you can listen to it, or you can listen to the episodes directly from the website. I never really go on there, and I never really link that. I used to link it a lot, but mostly, and we'll talk a little bit more about my branding strategy, which is galactic, aka put it out there and see what happens. But I've been using Buzzsprout from the beginning because they were just so straightforward and user-friendly for people who had never done anything like this before. I know there's more advanced, fancy ones out there, but I also think that you don't need to make things really complicated for yourself when you're just starting out. If your expectation when you just start something is for it to be perfect, you are going to be so incredibly disappointed. You are going to have a lot more of those cry sessions on the floor because your expectation that it's just going to be instant success, instant perfection, that you're never going to have any sound quality issues, that you're never going to edit something incorrectly and like accidentally chop off your own voice, and that you're never going to say the wrong thing. I remember in my early episodes, I used to say a lot, and I would go back and I would edit out every single and it would take hours. I would spend like 8 hours on a 40-minute podcast episode. But you live and you learn how to be a better speaker. And you also just stop caring about trying to make it perfect. Like, people didn't come here for me to have like a perfect salesman's voice. Like, this isn't The Price is Right. This is a real woman sitting at her desk talking, who also has to, breathe and like take a sip of water and laugh and not worry about laughing in someone's ear. Like, they either show up and they love you, or they don't and they'll just flip to the next podcast, and that's okay. Your work, whatever it is that you're destined to put out there, whatever it is that you want to begin talking about, it's going to reach the people that are resonating at that frequency. AKA, it's going to reach your people. That's the law of attraction. That's how it works. You're always giving off an energetic signature in everything that you do, everything that you create, and it is going to radiate and attract the people that are most aligned with that frequency. So if you've made it all the way to the point of having a distributor, right? So maybe you recorded your first episode, you figured out how to use the software, you bought a microphone, you made the damn episode, right? You probably obsessed over it and tried to make it perfect. And you probably didn't realize that it takes a ton of energy to talk for a long time. So your first episode is like 20 minutes and you feel like you've been talking for 2 hours. But if you made it that far, and you chose your podcast distributor, there's probably more of them now than there were 3 years ago. So you go through, you browse around, you check it out. And what they do is they are the ones who send it to Apple Podcasts, to Spotify. Those are my 2 biggest places where you guys are actually listening to these episodes. And that is who my distributor sends it to. They also send it to a bunch of other places and apps that I have never heard of, but people use them. And especially in other parts of the world, they use different apps. And so the distributor sends it to all of them. And they also track things, all of the stats and all of the metrics for me so that I can look at that whenever, when I want to, which is not very often anymore. I remember when I first started, I was like checking it every single day. And I'll never forget my first episode. I put my first episode out there. I was like, oh my God, no one's going to listen to this. I had such a downer mindset back then. even as I was starting to do psychic work. And I remember just bracing myself to be so disappointed that like only 5 people were going to listen. And sometimes that could happen. That could happen. Maybe you only know 5 people and one of them's your mom and they listen to your podcast. Like, that's an okay place to start. But I'll never forget like checking it, and it was like 20 people. It was like 20 downloads. Like maybe someone deleted it and like re-downloaded it a couple times. But it was like 20 downloads, and I was like, holy shit, oh my God, this is so awesome. Like, this is crazy. I can't stop laughing about it now. Yeah, I was really excited for those 20 people. And for the first few months of my podcast, it was the same 20 people over and over and over again. So I'm grateful that my distributor tracks all of those metrics for me and information about the places and the people listening that I could never track on my own. And so I'm grateful for that. I'm happy to have a distributor. I know that there are podcasters out there, very, very, very big ones, who don't use a distributor and they kind of have their own distribution process. And I just didn't feel the need for that. And I still don't. There is nothing like opening up Spotify and seeing all of your favorite artists and then like seeing your face and your podcast there. That's always like the most surreal feeling. Or when you're just like going throughout your day and you get an alert on your phone from Apple Podcasts and it's like your podcast and they're like, Luminary Podcast has a new episode. It's always the most surreal thing because you're also getting, you know, all of the people you look up to and you listen to their podcasts and all of your favorite artists, people whose music you listen to, and then like you're right there next to them. It's very cool, and I'm very, very grateful to get to do this. So if you are wondering what it cost me to start this podcast, if I had to pay for this microphone, which I didn't, it was given to me as a manifestation, I believe that it was $100 3 years ago. Nowadays, I don't even know if they still sell it. There's better ones out there, probably for less. So it was like $100. And this is like the crazy part. I only pay $18 a month for my podcast distributor. $18 a month. It's like a little bit more than my HBO Max subscription. It's $18 a month. That's it. And they put out all of my episodes and they track all of the metrics and I don't have to think about any of that stuff. And I just upload each month when I'm ready to. So like the complete cost of this podcast has stayed at $18 a month. If you want to count me paying for Canva, you could count that. I paid $13 a month for Canva to have the premium subscription, but I use that for everything in my business. So I would say it counts very, very, very small towards what I create in there for the podcast. I mean, we've had the same cover art for like a year or two. I hope that I have totally demolished your expectation that podcasting is somehow this expensive or super hard thing to do. Really, the block is in your own mind. You just haven't Googled and found the guy on YouTube that like teaches you how to do it really quickly. And I also want to say, because I do get people in my DMs on Instagram that are like, can you teach me how to do this? No, I cannot teach you how to do this. All of the information that I'm giving you here is the most that I'm going to give you. I am not going to give you a GarageBand tutorial through Instagram DMs. And yes, people have asked me to do that before, and I just ignore them because honestly, Google, everybody knows this. Just Google things. You don't need some specific person out there to teach you. You need the guy on YouTube that wants to teach it to you. And I'm not that guy. So no, I'm not going to give you that tutorial. The music that I use is royalty free. I didn't pay for it. That is one of my least favorite parts about business. I have to listen to a lot of music. Most of the music that I use is royalty free. It's just easier that way. I don't need to have a lot of fancy music, but I think that if you're going to be doing a lot of stuff on like YouTube, or you want to have a really slick opening music, which I think they said my distributor sends out emails with like podcasting tips every week, and it was like podcasts without intro music or without like the same opener every single time are much more popular. That's why I pulled my old opener. I used to have a pre-recorded, what we call a pre-roll, but it was like a pre-recorded introduction, and you'll hear it on all of my old episodes, along with my super cringy original music. Don't even get me started. Oh, yeah, every once in a while, like late at night, I think about that original music and I'm like, I should just re-record all of those episodes. No, I'm not going to do that. You just have to, I don't know, like skip like 30 seconds. The first 30 seconds of those old episodes. And I do like the music we have now. I like it. I found it somewhere. And that's one of my least favorite things, honestly, if I'm just going to be so for real on this episode, is especially when I have to do activations or when I was doing a lot of live events and I wanted to have music, and you have to have royalty-free music. And especially when you're dealing with YouTube, you have to be really careful about the music that you put on your YouTube videos, because they will flag you, and it's like a 3 strikes deal, like 3 strikes and you're out if you use copyrighted music that has not been approved for YouTube. So I listen to a lot of music, and it's my least favorite thing, because you're just sitting there going through lists of all this music that people have created and put out for free, and like bless their heart, but a lot of it is really, really not good. And you have to your ears just have to listen to it for so long until you find the one that you actually like. So I guess if I was to pick one thing about podcasting that I didn't like, that would be it. Having to listen to music. That's why we're probably going to have the same music for as long as I like it, for as long as I am okay with it. And listening to royalty-free music really keeps me liking what we've got going. So we're not going to change it anytime soon. All right, let's jump into the mindset and energy of launching your dream, putting yourself out there, whether it's going to be a podcast or an online business or a YouTube channel. I think that you should try it all and do it all and fall on your face and then get back up and do it better, and then grow and keep growing your audience and never give up. And then you're going to be living your dream so much sooner than the person who is like, oh, the first one only had 5 downloads and I only have 30 followers on Instagram and I posted 3 pictures and they only got 3 likes and I quit. Well, with an attitude like that, you are definitely not going to cut it as a content creator, a podcaster, or an online business owner, because it does take time to build an audience. I will say that if I had put more effort into marketing my podcast, I think I could have grown it a lot faster. At this point where it is, it's big enough that, I mean, you guys are amazing. There's so many downloads when I am not posting any new episodes at all. So to me, that is a successful podcast, one that is steadily growing as if there are new episodes being published when there are not new episodes being published. And it's given me a lot of mental and emotional freedom this year to focus on other things and to come back to the podcast when I have the energy for it and when I feel the transmissions wanting to come through. So I'm grateful for that. And the numbers at this point, 3 years in, are honestly at a place that I could not even fathom 3 years ago. I mean, the first 20 downloads really set me off, so you can imagine where we are now with thousands and thousands and thousands of downloads all around the world that just keep building every single day. I mean, it's at a point where there's not even a reason for me to check it more than once a week, because it's just going to grow so much from minute to minute, hour to hour. But I do think that if you are someone who maybe your number one priority is to start a podcast and to grow it, then definitely utilizing YouTube. I didn't start my YouTube channel until 2023. So less than a year ago, I started my YouTube channel, and a lot of you guys have found me from YouTube. And I was kind of kicking myself for not starting it earlier. So I do think that starting a YouTube channel is great. I think that if you have the time and energy and equipment to record the video of you actually doing the podcast, that is also fucking awesome. And a lot of people like to watch that. They like to watch their favorite podcasters sit around and record the podcast. I have considered doing it, and I know that I will do it in the future, but at this time right now, I just don't feel called to do it. And I do think that's something a little bit more interesting to watch when you have guests on your podcast. So having guests on my podcast was never my initial purpose. When I have had guests on the podcast, I have felt directly called to have that specific person come on and do an interview with them. But the main purpose of my podcast was a place where I could teach and where the channel transmissions could come through me. But if you have a lot of guests on your podcast, then you're also leveraging their audience and the people that want to listen to them. My episodes with guests on them are some of my highest downloaded because they're coming with their friends and family and their audience and their clients, and all of the people who want to listen to them are coming to that episode for that reason. Some of them are going to stick around and like me and like what I'm putting out there, but for the most part, you are leveraging someone else's audience to build your own audience when you have guests. So it is a faster way to build your podcast. That is the more traditional, I would say, way of having a podcast, is to interview other people. And if you're a good interviewer, you can build a tremendous, massive, 10 times the size of my podcast very quickly. People love good interviewers. They don't love interviewers that talk all over their guest, where it's just like kind of a jumbled mess. They don't have questions, thoughtful questions for their guests. But if you're a great interviewer, I mean, think about some of your favorite podcast episodes, and it's because the host was a great interviewer. And they asked the right questions that draw out from their guest what people want to hear, what people want to know about. I have heard from many of my guests that I'm a great interviewer, but I simply don't feel called to do it a lot at this point in the podcast. Maybe that's a future evolution where where I take the back seat and I just do a lot of interviews. And that is the fastest way to grow your audience because you're leveraging their audience plus your audience. So 1 + 1 = 2, and that is going to be 2 times the amount of downloads. Number of downloads and ratings on podcast apps are how you boost yourself to be more suggested, how you get onto those home pages, how you get suggested to people that are in your dream audience, but then also kind of on the fringes. So you're picking up a lot of extra people that may have never known about your podcast. And that's why podcasters ask you to rate and review them so that it can boost us on the podcast app algorithms and get suggested to more people. I used to ask every episode like, oh, please rate and review it. And what I have found personally for myself is that so many more people in the spirituality world where I'm actually working and operating from are more inclined to send an episode to their friend. Tons of you guys have told me that you found the podcast through a friend, that someone sent it to you, someone suggested it to you, someone sent you an episode or a screenshot, someone sent you my Instagram profile and recommended it, someone posted it on their Instagram stories, and that's how you found it. And when I shifted from asking people to rate and review it, even though those are important, this was just what worked better for me personally and me listening to my own intuition. When I shifted from asking for ratings and reviews to just recommend it to a friend or someone that you think might like this episode, that's when my podcast started growing exponentially. Went through another huge growth spurt just from that, because people would stop and think like, actually, so-and-so might like this episode, or so-and-so and I were just talking about this topic. And that's really been my marketing strategy. I mean, I will post on my Instagram stories that there is a new episode, but what I have found is that people who are already subscribed are the ones who see the alert first thing in the morning and they jump in and start listening to it. And that has taken time to build up those subscribers. So it takes time. I've said this already, and I've said it on a few episodes where I talk about podcasting. This is a long game. Your podcast is a baby until it's 5 years old, or until you hit like 1 million downloads or 500,000 downloads. It's considered a baby in the podcasting world because podcasters, the OG group of podcasters, had to literally build it up from nothing, from scratch. Like it was a fringe thing. It was like kind of this weird thing on the side that wasn't really gaining a lot of traction. And now, especially after 2020 and everyone had too much time at home, now podcasting is everywhere. But that also means that there's more people and there's more competition. And the way that podcasting builds is through downloads, which means you need time for it to cook. You need time to get all of those downloads. So if you're only in it for the short term and short-term satisfaction, and you're only going to keep going if everyone that you know downloads it on your first day, then you're probably not emotionally mature enough to do something like this, where it's going to take years to build it up to a point where you look at it and you say, it's just successful on its own. I don't even need to do anything. It just grows by itself. I remember learning when I was researching about podcasting, and this really stuck with me, and this really made me like determined to prove that I was not going to quit early. And it was a statistic that like 90% of people don't make it past 5 episodes. Publishing 5 episodes, because one, they either find the whole process of talking into a microphone too taxing, too self-conscious, or they just don't have the downloads to keep going. They don't have the proof already created that it's going to be successful. And the truth is, 5 episodes is not what I would consider a successful podcast. There's only one person I know, and it's because he has an audience of already 500,000 people on Instagram who started his podcast. And he was the only person I've gone, and there was like 3 episodes total on his podcast, and I was listening to them. But otherwise, in general, we tend to stay away from baby podcasts just because we're just not sure that they know what the hell they're talking about, right? You have to like build up your reputation. You have to build up a library, a catalog for people to binge and to go through and to surf through to find something that interests them. But if you want to start your podcast, make a commitment that you are definitely going to make it past 5 episodes. Make a commitment to publish 20 episodes and just see where you get at 20 episodes. But the truth has been, for me, as someone who uses this as a platform to teach with very little marketing, it has taken 130 episodes for it to really just have the traction. I mean, 130 hours of me talking. What the hell? 130 hours. You can't even fathom right now how much energy and time and devotion goes into, this is going to be episode 135, and a few of them are activations and meditations, so we'll just say 130. You can't even fathom how much time, energy, attention, channeling goes into 130 podcast episodes. That's 3 years of my life. There is this dedication inside of me, just this knowing that this is part of what I'm supposed to do. It's not the main thing, but it is a huge part of what I am supposed to do. And it's something that I love doing, that even after 130 episodes, I still love sitting down to the mic and talking your ear off. My mother can't believe it. She listens to a lot of the episodes, except the ones I tell her not to listen to, that are maybe a little too explicit. But She listens to most of the episodes, and she's the only one in my family that I'm aware of that has admitted to me that she listens to my podcast, right? My family, like, sometimes, honestly, they're just a bunch of assholes. And, like, I love them, but also, like, you can be a real asshole. And so she's the only one who listens, and she's like, I just don't know. Like, I have to listen to your podcast in parts. I have to listen to like 30 minutes here and 30 minutes there. I just don't know how you talk for an hour straight, 2 hours straight. And I'm like, Mom, if you saw me recording this, you would actually know that sometimes it can take 3 hours to record an 1.5-hour episode. I have to stop. I have to breathe. I have to like recalibrate my mind. I have to like take a sip of water. I have to like check my phone. You know, you don't just sit down in like total stream of consciousness on day one and you just never hit the stop button. I hit the stop button all the time. I pause all the time. Sometimes I have to take phone calls and like do other stuff in the middle of recording a podcast episode. So there's hours and hours that go into it. But honestly, I do think it's pretty fun. I think it's fun. If you're someone that gets to 20 episodes and you're like, I just don't think this is fun at all for me, then you're probably just not meant to do podcasting. 130 episodes later, and I don't even know how many hours that is, I still think it's fun. And I've gotten to the point where I use very little notes, and I used to have like everything written out, all of these extensive notes and everything bullet pointed, everything I wanted to say. And now I'm like, this is what the episode's going to be about. And I like make like 3 bullet points to make sure I remember that one thing. And then I just jump in and go. But it took time to build up to that. So some of the mindset that goes into this is, number one, like you have to think that it's fun. You have to have this kind of internal devotion to it to at least hit certain markers on your journey, and in, episode markers. Don't just stop at 5. My brother started a podcast and he stopped at like 1 and it was like 20 minutes long. I was like, dude, I don't even know what the name of it was. But yeah, you have to keep going. You have to build an audience. You have to talk loud and proud about what you do. I used to talk about the podcast on Instagram and wherever else I could get people's attention. In the beginning, I would talk about it constantly. I would post about the same episode 4, 5, 6, 7 times. And I would always like talk about it and try to get people hyped up about it. And I'm grateful that I don't have to do that anymore. But there is this element of you need to talk loud and proud about what your dream is, what you're launching out in the world. Because the truth is that when you're new and you're a baby in it, no one's paying attention. You have to make them pay attention. You have to talk about it loud and proud. I see so many people like tiptoeing around. They're like, I just launched this thing and it's very small and it's very brand new. And like, I don't know if you're going to like it. And it's like, fuck it. If you like it, just assume that other people are going to like it. You're going to find those people. And guess what? Most of those people, I just told you, the only one person in my whole family, my dear sweet mother, listens to my podcast and nobody else does. In the beginning, I was definitely expecting them to be like, wow, look at you. You're starting a podcast. That's so cool. I'm definitely going to listen. I'm definitely going to subscribe. I'm definitely going to write and leave you a 5-star review. And then like months go by and they're like, oh, you started a podcast? Like, oh, cringe. That's an impression of my little sister's voice. Don't tell her. But she don't listen to the podcast, so she's not gonna know. Yeah, some of those people that are really close to you right now, they're not gonna give a fuck about what you're doing. Especially if you're coming from a background where like no one has ever done anything like this. No one's ever been a public figure. They've never had their own business. They've never done anything public facing. Most of those people are going to think that it is cringe because their nervous system is so afraid of what it would be like to have that kind of visibility. And honestly, that's their problem. Don't make it your problem by feeling bad about yourself that they're not listening. right? The people related to me don't even listen to this podcast. Strangers across the world whose name I don't know listen to this podcast. So you kind of have to grow your own emotional maturity to be able to handle that some of your close friends and family are just not going to be interested in what you're doing. And that's okay. There's a whole group of people out there that are going to be interested in what you are doing if you continue to do it, if you let it cook. One of the best marketing tips that I ever learned, and I think about this all the time, and this is why I shamelessly sell my products, my services, my memberships, my coaching programs, like whatever it is that I'm up to, I sell it all day long on Instagram stories. I talk about it all day long. I'll talk about it 50, 100, a million times. I don't care if you're sick of hearing about it, then you can leave. And most people don't leave because people actually love to be sold to. They're always shopping and they're always wondering, is this right for me? And one of the best marketing tips that I ever learned is that most people have to see something, especially if it's totally new and they've never been introduced to it before. They have to see it up to 7 times before they even click on it. That's not even them making a purchase yet, but before they even click on it to go look at it and see what it is. 7 times. So if you talked about something 1 time, 2 times, and you're like, no one's paying attention, no one cares, like, of course, because that's the mindset that you have. So you're going to shift that mindset into, I'm going to talk about it loud and proud because this is what I'm excited about. This is what I'm up to. This is what I'm doing. And I'm going to delusionally believe that everyone around me is really interested in this. And what's going to happen is that the people who are not resonant for it are going to kind of fall off. And that's going to go off their radar. And you're going to attract new people that are so interested in what you are doing and that are ready to click and are ready to listen and are ready to subscribe and are ready to buy from you and are ready to book the session. But you've got to talk about it loud and proud. And sometimes you've got to talk about it up to 7 times. If I have something that I'm selling in my business, a program, a service, activation, a membership, whatever, I always tell myself I'm not even going to measure the sales or anything that has happened until I've talked about it at least 7 times. And then that's how I really know where I'm actually at. That's how I really know that people have paid attention to it and decided yes or decided no. 7 times. And the sweet spot for me has really been, like, I have amazing people that love to buy everything I offer, on day 1. But the sweet spot for me has been right between like 4 to 6 times that I talk about something that people actually start asking questions and clicking and deciding if they're going to get into it or buy it or listen to it or subscribe to it. The next piece of mindset and energy that has served me so well and that I've really only cultivated at like an expertise level in the last year has been just complete and absolutely delusionally, fully 100% believing in myself and whatever I'm choosing to do right off the bat. There's no room for doubts. There's no room. I love the Tony Robbins term, like the boats, like you've got to burn the boats. You have to burn all of the exit strategies. So for me, when I start something now, I'm like, there's only one result. There's only one way this fucking thing turns out. And it's the way that I want it to turn out. That's the end game. That's the result. That's the finish line. That's what we're going for. We're going to talk about it 100 times. We'll change strategies. We'll learn from it. But this only ends one way. One way. And it's the way that I want it to end. Complete and absolute delusional belief in myself and whatever it is that I'm doing. If you can start launching your dream with that attitude, that mentality, that unwavering belief in yourself, you say no to doubt, you say no to guilt, you say no to shame, you tell it to fuck right off, get out of my mind, get out of my body, get out of my energy, there's no place for you here, you don't belong, you're not a part of me, you're not the story anymore, I don't believe in you anymore, I believe in me. If you can cultivate that for yourself, you will be absolutely 100% unstoppable. Everything that you touch will be successful. This is just simple energetics, simple law of attraction, simple manifestation. You get what you believe. You get what you believe. So if you go into launching your dream with all of this, I'm going to need the external world to tell me that it's good enough so that I keep going. And if everybody doesn't buy it the first day, and everybody doesn't listen the first day, and everybody doesn't subscribe the first day, then it must not be good. Then I'm not meant to do this. Then the universe is telling me that this is not the right path for me. I hate hearing that. I hate hearing that, and I do apologize if I've ever said anything like that on the podcast, but I have grown into the clear knowing that that is absolute and complete bullshit. You are the universe. If you want it, you got it. If that is what you want, then it's already done inside of your vortex. But you've got to match the energy with your mind and your body. And what happens is that you start running around with doubt and with fear and with smallness in your mind and with all of the bullshit excuses about why you can't. And then you bring that energy into your project. You bring all of the doubt into your project. You bring all of the uncertainty into your project. And then you make the project literally like you're cooking. And you're making the project with all of this ingredient of doubt, fear, hesitation, self-consciousness. What if they don't like it? What if they don't like me? What if this doesn't work? What if I'm not meant to do this? And you mix all of that in there, and then you wonder why. You wonder why that's the result that you get. You've got to delusionally believe in yourself. Whether you're going to start a podcast or business or YouTube channel, whatever it is, people are out there doing extraordinary things. And yeah, when I started this podcast, I did not delusionally believe in myself. I was scared. I was afraid. It took me years of distilling that energy out of my mind and body so that it no longer came into the creation. And that's when things started to turn out the way that I wanted them to. One of the greatest energies that I have cultivated is what you might perceive to be non-attachment. I'm not attached to this podcast at all. And in the beginning, I was very attached to it. And then over time, it became less and less attached because it was something so normal inside of my reality. It was just kind of always there. And then over the last year or so, especially after I put it on YouTube, and it started to grow organically on its own quite a bit, I just started becoming less and less and less attached to it. And I started realizing the attachment that I had to it for those first 2 years. And the less attached to it I realized that when you are not attached to something, it's because you are more confident in yourself. You are more believing in yourself. It doesn't matter as much in the negative to you. When you are attached to something, it's because you want it to give something to you that you can only give to yourself. Confidence, meaning, believing in yourself, unwavering devotion, unwavering faith. Positive energy, good thoughts, good expectations, positive expectation. A podcast cannot give that to me. I have to give that to myself. And so in a way, it is the art of detachment. I'm detaching from the external world because I'm understanding that only I can give myself what I am seeking. Whatever I sought in the external world cannot be given to me. Only I can give that to myself within me. And what you eventually come to realize is that you create the evidence that you are looking for. When you start your podcast, your online business, your YouTube channel, whatever dream it is, when you start that, you begin to look to the external to give you the validation, the applause, the compliments, the markers that it is legitimate, that it is working, that you are good enough. You want the external to give you the evidence. And what you will learn on your journey, and if you can get it now before you even start, you will be years ahead of where I was when I started. Only you can decide to create the evidence that you're looking for. Every single one of those words that I just used is the key. You decide to create the evidence that you are looking for. You decide that it's good enough. You decide that it's going to be successful. You decide that you're never going to give up. You decide that it's going to support you financially. You are the one that decides all of those things because you're creating your reality. You thought that the external was going to tell you, that the external was going to give you this evidence, and they're not. They never ever will. There have been times in my life where people would look at it and say, wow, you're really, really successful. And I would look at myself and think I am a failure. Because despite being surrounded by certain types of evidence, I didn't have the type of evidence that I wanted. I was always chasing the next marker, the next metric, the next financial goal. Well, I need to get to this and to this and to this and to this. Because I wanted the external world to create the evidence for me and give it to me. And it can't. It never will. That's why when you look to the external world for your validation in whatever you're going to launch out there, you will always be disappointed. It will never be enough. They can't create the evidence for you. Only you can create the evidence. And you create it by deciding in your mind, this is going to be successful. This is what I'm going to do. When doubt and when fear and when shame and when guilt try to come in, I'm going to say, no, fuck off. Fuck off. Bet you weren't expecting that in your spirituality lesson of the day. Honestly, sometimes you just got to get real with the energy. Get real with it. Get real with your anxiety. Get real with your fears. Get real with all of the guilt. Get real with all of the shame. Get real with it. Get real with the embarrassment of having to put yourself out there and start from zero. Guess what? Everyone who launches a podcast starts with 0 fucking downloads. 0. That's day 1. You've got to decide that you're the creator of your reality. You've got to decide to say no to embarrassment. Say no to shame. Well, I'm too ashamed to put myself out there. I'm too ashamed to be seen starting out small. I'm too ashamed to be beginning. I'm too ashamed to be the new kid on the block. I'm too ashamed to be learning something. If you have kids, do you expect your kids to go to kindergarten and be full of shame that they don't know kindergarten stuff? No, you'd be like, you're 5 years old. You're new. You're new at this. You're new at this whole being human and life thing. You don't have anything to be ashamed about. You're brand new. It's going to take some time for you to learn. It's the same thing with starting your dream. It's the same thing with launching anything. You're fucking new. Give yourself a break. Give yourself some grace. Fill yourself up with some belief that you can do it and it's going to be successful and you're going to create that evidence and you're never going to stop and you don't care what the external reality tries to say. You're going to say no to shame. You're going to say no to smallness. You're going to say no to guilt. You're going to say no to quitting. You're going to say no to getting down on yourself. You're going to say no, motherfucker, get out of here. You don't belong. What belongs is my success. What belongs is my love. What belongs is my unwavering, absolute, complete, delusional faith and belief in myself. I am the one for me, for my life, for my dreams, for what I want to put out there. I'm the one. I decide. You've been the decider and the one since you got here. Since you came to this planet, since you came to this incarnation, it's always been you for your life. No one has ever ever created anything inside of your reality for you. It was all you all along. So you've got to grab that bull by the horns if you're going to get in the ring here with us. With all of us who have decided to put something out there in the world. Get in the ring. Jump in. But you're going to have to grab the bull by the horns. You're going to have to show it who's boss. You're going to have to become the one. You're going to have to become the believer in yourself. The number one fan. The number one believer in you. Because if you go first, the law of attraction says, I will match your energy. 100% of the time. You don't believe in yourself, I will match that energy. Nobody around you believes in you. You don't believe you're successful, I will match that energy. You are a fucking failure. The energy around you will match you 100% of the time. That is our promise to you. So you got to choose what energy you want, because that's what you're going to be matched with. You choose in your mind. Mindset is everything to me now, because I have fully understood how my thoughts trigger energy inside of my body that I interpret as feelings and emotions. I understand that connection so well now. Not going to let in the negativity, not going to let in thinking down about myself or my creations. I'm not going to let in the fear or the doubt. When I approach something new that I am creating, that I am going to launch out into the world, there's only one fucking way that this turns out. And it's the way that I want it to. There's no room in my thoughts, in my mind, in my body, in my feelings, or in my energy for anything different. I'm going to hold that unwavering belief, knowing that sometimes it's got to cook a little bit to get the result that I want, but there's only one result that's going to come. I don't care how many adjustments I've got to make. I don't care what hoops I need to jump through. There is only one result that I will accept inside of my reality, and it's the one that I want. There's only one way that this turns out. And if you can cultivate that mindset and that energy, there is nothing that you cannot do or be or have. I am so proud of this podcast. Thank you to all of the listeners, especially the OG listeners that had to hear that atrocious original intro music. They were here maybe some of you are literally from day one. First episode I ever put out. I remember some of you guys being so excited that I was finally going to have an outlet somewhere to put all of my teachings, and it's been an incredible 3 years. I know that there are many, many more years to come, many, many more evolutions of this podcast that are ready to come into this reality. So thank you very, very much for buying the proverbial ticket and taking the ride. There's someone out there that you think might enjoy this podcast or has always wanted to launch their dream into the world and really needs to know that it's not as difficult as your mind is making it, and some energetics and mindset work, and really just light that fire under you. There are so many people in the world that want to experience something that you could create, something you could put out there, but ultimately the decision is and will always be yours. The external world cannot choose for you, and you'll never get enough signs to know that it's the right path. The path that you choose becomes the path that you live. Beautiful beings of divine light, you already know that I will see you on the next one.